Choose your sacrifice wisely. Jordan Peterson's mind-blowing advice for young people. Life is suffering. That's not a pessimistic statement, it's a fundamental truth. From the moment we are born, we are thrown into a world of complexity, uncertainty, and inevitable pain. You will experience loss. You will struggle. You will fail. There is no way around it. But here's the real question. If suffering is unavoidable, what are you willing to suffer for? This is where Jordan Peterson's wisdom becomes life-changing. You don't get to choose whether you will sacrifice, you only get to choose what you will sacrifice. And the decision you make will shape the rest of your life. Most people don't think about sacrifice in this way. They think they can avoid it altogether, that they can coast through life without giving up anything. But that's an illusion. If you refuse to sacrifice for something meaningful, you will still sacrifice your potential, your future, and your sense of purpose. The person who avoids hard work sacrifices success. The person who refuses to face discomfort sacrifices confidence. The person who never takes responsibility sacrifices meaning. But whether you realize it or not, you are already paying a price. The only difference is whether you are paying it consciously or unconsciously. This is why so many young people feel lost. They are trapped in a state of passive sacrifice, giving up their time, their energy, and their ambition without even realizing it. They scroll endlessly through social media, distracting themselves from the deep dissatisfaction that quietly gnaws at them. They avoid challenges, thinking they are choosing comfort, but in reality, they are choosing a slow decay. They let fear dictate their actions, not understanding that in doing so, they are sacrificing the very life they desire. And the worst part, they don't even know they're making a choice. But here's the truth no one tells you. You must choose your sacrifice, or life will choose it for you. And life is not merciful when it makes that choice. If you refuse to sacrifice for something meaningful, life will sacrifice your potential on the altar of regret. If you do not voluntarily take on responsibility, life will impose suffering on you in ways you cannot control. This is not just an abstract idea, it's a brutal reality. Look around. How many people do you see who are bitter, resentful, and broken? They didn't start out that way. They simply failed to choose their sacrifice, and life made the choice for them.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
So what does this mean for you? It means you need to stop avoiding pain and start choosing it. Not meaningless pain, not suffering for the sake of suffering, but purposeful suffering. The suffering that comes from discipline. The suffering that comes from pushing yourself beyond what you thought you were capable of. The suffering that comes from delaying gratification, from taking responsibility, from striving towards something greater than yourself. Because that kind of suffering transforms you. It makes you stronger. It turns chaos into order. It turns weakness into resilience. But this leads to the most important question of all: what is worth sacrificing for? Because if you get this wrong, you will end up chasing the wrong things. You might sacrifice everything for money, only to realize that wealth alone does not bring fulfillment. You might sacrifice your integrity for approval, only to feel empty when the applause fades. You might sacrifice your dreams for security, only to wake up one day filled with regret. The world will offer you countless things to chase, but not all of them are worth the price. So how do you decide? How do you know what is truly worth sacrificing for? The price of meaning, why you must suffer for something greater if you want a meaningful life. You have to pay for it. And the currency is suffering. There is no shortcut, no way to cheat the system, no way to have deep fulfillment without deep sacrifice. Meaning is expensive. It costs you your comfort, your laziness, your excuses. It demands that you trade in your illusions for responsibility, your fleeting pleasures for long-term purpose. And if you refuse to pay that price, you will suffer anyway, just in a way that is meaningless and unbearable. But think about the people who inspire you. The ones who have built something great, who radiate confidence, who seem to move through life with a sense of purpose. Do you think they got there by avoiding struggle? No, they suffered. They sacrificed. They endured. The artist who creates something timeless spent years in solitude, practicing when no one was watching. The athlete who dominates the competition pushed through exhaustion when no one else would. The entrepreneur who built an empire took risks, faced rejection, and worked when others were asleep. Every success story is a story of sacrifice. Every person who has achieved something worthwhile has suffered for it. But here's the key difference: they chose their suffering. They decided what was worth sacrificing for. And because they made that choice, their suffering wasn't just pain, it was transformation. It turned them into something more than they were before. It gave their lives weight, depth, and significance. This is the fundamental difference between people who thrive and people who decay. It's not that one group suffers and the other doesn't. Everyone suffers. The difference is that those who thrive suffer for something meaningful, while those who decay suffer for nothing. And yet, most people avoid this truth. They chase happiness instead, thinking it will save them. But happiness is fleeting. It's a byproduct, not a goal. You can't build your life around it because it disappears the moment things get hard. If you only do what makes you happy, you will never grow, never achieve, never become the person you are capable of becoming. That's why people who chase happiness without meaning end up feeling empty. They have everything they thought they wanted: comfort, entertainment, distraction, but they wake up one day realizing they have nothing of real value. So the real question is not, how can I be happy? The real question is, what am I willing to suffer for? Because whatever you choose will define your life. If you suffer for nothing, you will be nothing. If you suffer for shallow things, you will live a shallow life. But if you suffer for something great, something truly meaningful, then your life will take on a depth that most people will never experience. But how do you know what's worth suffering for? That's where responsibility comes in. Because meaning is not about what you get from life, it's about what you give to it. The more responsibility you take on, the more meaning you will find. This is why people who dedicate themselves to something greater than themselves, whether it's a family, a craft, a cause, or a mission, feel a sense of fulfillment that no amount of pleasure can replace. Responsibility forces you to grow. It forces you to face your weaknesses, to develop discipline, to become someone worthy of respect. And in doing so, it gives your suffering a purpose. But here's the catch: responsibility is heavy. It's hard. It demands that you sacrifice your comfort, your entitlement, your desire for an easy life. That's why so many people run from it. They don't realize that by running, they are actually choosing a different kind of suffering, the suffering of aimlessness, of regret, of knowing deep down that they are not living up to their potential. And that suffering is far worse. So ask yourself, what weight are you willing to carry? What burden are you willing to bear? What sacrifice are you willing to make in exchange for a life of meaning? Because if you do not answer those questions, life will answer them for you. And you may not like the answer it gives, the burden and the reward. Why carrying the right load will set you free. Most people think that freedom is the absence of obligation, that the key to a good life is to escape responsibility, to live without burdens. But this is a lie, a dangerous one. Because the truth is, you are always carrying something. The only choice you have is what you carry. If you do not pick up a meaningful burden, life will hand you a meaningless one: depression, anxiety, regret, a sense of drifting through existence with no purpose. The paradox of life is that the right burden doesn't weigh you down, it lifts you up. The right responsibility doesn't trap you, it sets you free. Look at the people who feel lost, who spend years numbing themselves with distractions, addictions, and endless entertainment. They are not free. They are enslaved by their own avoidance, shackled by the fear of committing to something bigger than themselves. They believe that by rejecting burdens, they are choosing an easier life. But in reality, they are choosing a slow, quiet form of suffering. A suffering that creeps up on them when they least expect it. A suffering that whispers in their ear late at night, "You were meant for more, and you know it." The reason responsibility brings freedom is simple: it gives your life structure. And structure creates the conditions for growth. If you have nothing to push against, nothing to strive toward, nothing to hold you accountable, you will collapse inward. You will become weak, both physically and mentally. But if you take on a worthy burden, something that stretches you, something that forces you to become stronger, you will grow into a person you never thought you could be. Think about it like this: a person lost in the ocean, floating aimlessly, is not free. They are at the mercy of the waves, being pulled in whatever direction the current decides. But a person who has a destination, who has a direction, who has the discipline to row toward something meaningful, they are free. Not because their journey is easy, but because they have chosen their struggle. They are moving towards something, not just being carried by whatever forces happen to act upon them. And this is why responsibility is not a punishment, it is a gift. It is the thing that forces you to rise to your potential. It is the thing that separates those who live with purpose from those who merely exist. But the problem is, most people wait. They wait for inspiration, wait for confidence, wait for some magical moment where they suddenly feel ready to take on life. But that moment never comes. Because confidence doesn't come before responsibility, it comes after you take it on. Strength doesn't appear before the struggle, it is built through the struggle. This is why the only real way to find meaning is to act now. To stop waiting for circumstances to be perfect. To stop avoiding the discomfort of growth. And to stop telling yourself the lie that you are not ready. Because you will never feel ready. That's the point. Readiness is a myth. Every strong person, every successful person, every person who has built something great started before they felt ready. They took on the burden first, and in doing so, they became the kind of person who could carry it. So what does this mean for you? It means you need to ask yourself, what weight am I avoiding? What responsibility am I running from? What challenge am I pretending isn't mine to face? Because deep down, you already know the answer. You know the thing you should be doing, the thing that scares you, the thing that would force you to grow. And you also know that as long as you avoid it, you will never feel truly fulfilled. But here's the good news: you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to start. Pick up a burden that matters. Accept the struggle. Step into the discomfort. Because in the end, the weight you carry is what shapes you. And if you choose the right weight, if you sacrifice for something that truly matters, you will discover that the burden you feared was actually the thing that set you free. The path forward, how to take control of your life and build something worthwhile at some point, you have to decide what kind of person you are going to be. Not just in theory, not just in your imagination, but in reality, through action, through discipline, through the choices you make every single day. Because life does not wait for you. Time moves forward whether or not you are ready. The difference between those who build something worthwhile and those who remain stuck is not talent, not luck, not intelligence. It is the ability to take responsibility for their own existence, and to stop blaming their circumstances, to stop making excuses, to stop waiting for someone else to come and save them. No one is coming to save you. That is a painful truth, but it is also the most liberating truth you will ever accept. Because once you stop waiting for external validation, for some perfect opportunity, for some miraculous change in your motivation, but you realize that you are the one with the power. You are the one who decides whether you will waste your days or use them. You are the one who determines whether you will remain the same or become something more. The responsibility is yours, and that is what makes it meaningful. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think they need to change everything at once. They set massive, unrealistic goals, thinking that transformation happens overnight. And when they inevitably fail to sustain those changes, they give up, telling themselves they were never capable in the first place. That is not how real progress works. Real progress is slow. It is painful. It is built on small, daily actions, repeated over and over until they become who you are. You don't wake up one day as a disciplined, confident, capable person. You become that person by making the right choices, even when you don't feel like it. That means waking up early when you would rather sleep in. It means putting in the work when no one is watching. It means pushing through discomfort, through boredom, through self-doubt. It means doing the right thing even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because that is where real strength is forged. That is where the weak are separated from the strong. Not in moments of inspiration, but in the quiet, grinding, unglamorous moments where you choose discipline over comfort, action over excuses. And here's the secret: the more you do this, the easier it becomes. The first steps are always the hardest because you are fighting against years of bad habits, years of conditioning, years of avoidance. But once you push through, once you prove to yourself that you are capable of more than you thought, something shifts inside you. You stop seeing challenges as threats and start seeing them as opportunities. You stop fearing failure and start using it as fuel. You stop waiting for motivation and start creating it through action. This is how real transformation happens. Not by waiting for the perfect moment, but by seizing this moment right now. Because your future is being created in this very instant with the choices you make today. Every action you take is either moving you closer to the person you want to become or further away from it. There is no standing still. If you are not growing, you are decaying. If you are not building, you are disintegrating. That is the law of life. So what will you do with this knowledge? Will you let it pass through you, nodding along but changing nothing? Or will you take this as the wake-up call that it is? Because the truth is, You are capable of far more than you believe. But no one can prove that to you except yourself. But you have to put in the work. You have to take the risks. You have to make the sacrifices. And if you commit, if you refuse to quit, if you take full responsibility for your life, you will wake up one day realizing that you have built something truly worthwhile. A life of meaning, a life of depth, a life that was worth the struggle. The choice has always been yours, and now it's time to make it.